Snow hammered against the cabin walls like 1,000 fists. Inside, Emily clutched a rusty fire poker, her knuckles white, her heart racing. Then, 3 violent knocks shook the wooden door. "Please, just one night!" A man's desperate voice cut through the howling storm. Emily froze, her blood turned cold. Outside, through the frosted glass, she saw the shadow of a tall figure, and in his arms, something smaller. A child. Another cough rattled through the night, sharp, fragile, breaking her defenses. "No strangers," she whispered to herself. But the doorknob quivered under the pounding. The storm screamed louder. The windows rattled as if the whole world demanded her choice. She knew what kindness had cost her once before. Betrayal, loss, pain. Yet here it was again, her past colliding with the present in one impossible decision. When the hinges groaned open, snow burst inside, blinding her. The man stood soaked to the bone, his son shivering, lips blue, eyes half closed. For a moment, Emily didn't see intruders. She saw survival. She saw fate. And in that instant, she had no idea. This stranger was not who he seemed. Emily's grip on the fire poker didn't loosen, even as she stepped aside. "Get in, quickly!" Michael ducked under the doorway, carrying Noah like fragile glass. Snow spilled in behind them, devouring the floorboards in a thin white sheet. Emily slammed the door, bolting it shut, but the cold had already seeped into the room. "Sit by the fire. Don't touch anything else." Her voice was sharp, commanding. Michael nodded silently, laying Noah down on the old couch. His jacket came off, wrapping around the boy's trembling frame. Noah's cough tore through the silence, echoing in Emily's chest like a warning bell. Emily's eyes narrowed. Walking a sick child through a blizzard? That's not just reckless, it's insane. Michael met her gaze, his own tired, heavy with something unsaid. "We had nowhere else to go. The car died. The roads closed." His voice cracked, but he steadied himself. "I didn't have a choice." The fire popped, sparks leaping into the dark. Emily's stomach twisted. She remembered another man, another night, promises that turned to ashes. Trust had cost her nearly everything before. Still, her hands moved on their own, grabbing dry towels, heating water, placing a chipped mug of soup onto the table. Michael murmured, "Thank you." But she ignored him, folding her arms tight. Across the flames, their eyes locked, her suspicion against his desperation. The storm outside clawed at the windows, but inside, the tension was sharper than the cold. "One night," Emily said finally, her voice low, unyielding. "By morning, you're gone." Michael's jaw tightened. "One night, that's all we need." But as she glanced at Noah's pale, sleeping face, Emily felt a crack in her armor, and that terrified her most of all. The storm raged on, screaming against the cabin walls, but inside, only the fire spoke, crackling, spitting embers into the dark. Emily sat rigid near the hearth, her eyes fixed on the flames, though every nerve in her body tracked the man and child across the room. Michael had placed Noah gently on the couch, layering coats and blankets around his small, feverish frame. Emily watched as he moved with a precision that wasn't hurried, but tender, wringing out a cloth, pressing it softly to the boy's forehead, whispering words too quiet to reach her. Her chest tightened. He was using her towels, white ones she kept folded away, untouched for years. And yet, instead of carelessness, he handled them with respect, rinsing, folding, returning them neatly as though they belonged to him. He didn't know she was watching. Emily's fingers clenched her mug. Memories stabbed through her. Men who took without asking, who left wreckage behind. But this one? His every action contradicted the shadows she had painted around strangers. Noah whimpered in his sleep. Michael leaned closer, brushing damp hair from his son's face. "You're okay, buddy. I'm right here." The words, simple and fragile, carried more weight than any grand promise Emily had ever heard. For the first time, she saw not a threat, not a trespasser, just a father clinging to the only thing he had left. Quietly, Emily rose, stepping into the hallway. Her heart battled itself, fear against something she hadn't allowed in years, compassion. She reached for a quilt at the top of her closet. It was her grandmother's, white with tiny blue flowers. She almost put it back, but then she carried it to the living room. When she returned, Michael startled. Caught in the act of smoothing Noah's blanket, Emily held out the quilt. "Here, it's warm and clean." Their hands brushed as he took it, his voice low. "Thank you." For a heartbeat, the fire flickered between them, not as a barrier, but as a fragile bridge. The storm still howled, but in that room, something had shifted. Morning arrived not with sunlight, but with silence, thick, heavy, and white. Emily pushed the door open a crack, only to see the world buried beneath a suffocating blanket of snow. The path, the trees, even the faint tracks from last night had vanished. "They won't plow until tomorrow, at least," she muttered as she shut the door. Michael looked up from where he was feeding Noah spoonfuls of lukewarm soup. His jaw tightened. "Then, we're stuck." Emily's shoulders sagged. She wanted to snap at him, to remind him this wasn't part of the deal. But the exhaustion in his eyes and the way he steadied Noah's trembling hand stole the words from her mouth. That day, the cabin became something else. Not a battlefield of suspicion, but a fragile truce. Michael took the axe outside, chopping firewood with steady precision, his breath fogging in the cold. Emily watched from the window, her arms crossed, but when she saw the neat stack he left by the porch, a reluctant warmth stirred inside her. Meanwhile, Noah's cough persisted, sharp and relentless. Emily didn't hesitate. She brewed ginger tea with honey, cooled it carefully, and held the cup for him. Noah's tiny fingers brushed hers, and he gave a weak smile before sipping. Something in her chest cracked open. When Noah grew restless, Emily knelt by his side, wiping sweat from his brow, humming a lullaby she hadn't sung in years. Michael lingered in the doorway, watching silently. The sight of Emily, golden hair falling forward, voice soft. Noah's small hand cradled in hers, etched itself into his mind like a memory he never wanted to lose. Later, as the storm dragged on, Michael joined them by the fire, with scraps of paper. He folded clumsy animals for Noah, a crooked bird, a lopsided moose. Noah giggled, the sound fragile but pure. Emily laughed too, surprising herself. The sound filled the cabin like a chord struck after years of silence. Across the flickering firelight, Emily and Michael shared a glance. Not long, not bold, but enough. Enough to make her wonder if fate had locked them inside the cabin for more than just survival. Enough to make him believe, for the first time in years, that storms might end, and warmth could return. Outside, snow still clawed at the world, but inside, three strangers sat close, bound not by blood, but by something far rarer. The storm finally surrendered. After 2 relentless nights, the morning sun cut through the clouds, casting a pale silver glow across the buried world. Emily stood at the porch, breath ghosting in the frozen air, watching as the silence outside felt heavier than the storm itself. Behind her, the cabin was too still. She turned back. Michael's coat no longer hung on the hook. Noah's blanket folded neatly on the couch. The couch was empty. Her heart skipped. "Michael?" No reply. She rushed to the door, pushing it open, searching for footprints. Nothing. The snow was untouched, as if they had never existed at all. It wasn't until she returned inside that she saw it, a small envelope resting on the wooden table near the fire. Her name scrawled across it in strong, deliberate handwriting. Her fingers trembled as she opened it. "Emily, there are debts in life that cannot be repaid with words. You opened your door, and more than that, you opened something I thought was lost forever. Hope. I will carry this night with me always. You gave my son warmth when the world gave him only cold, and for that, you gave me more than you know. M." The paper blurred as her eyes stung. She pressed it against her chest, but something heavier slid out with it. A sleek black card, colder than the air itself. It was unlike any card she had ever seen. No bank name, no signature, just a strip of numbers and a small chip glinting in the candlelight. It felt heavier than plastic, metallic, almost ominous. Emily's breath caught. She had seen these once, in news reports about the ultra-wealthy. Cards whispered about like myths, black cards, unlimited, untouchable. reserved only for those who commanded power far beyond ordinary reach. Why would he leave this with her? Confusion spiraled into unease. She clutched it tightly, pacing the floorboards. The night replayed in her mind. His quiet care for Noah, his exhaustion, the honesty in his voice. Was it all real, or had she been sheltering someone far more dangerous, far more powerful than she realized? Her pulse quickened. She thought of returning it, of throwing it into the fire, but even as the flames crackled, she couldn't. Instead, she tucked it inside her coat pocket, the weight of it pressing against her heart like a secret too big to hold. That evening, she went into town, her boots crunching on ice, her mind spinning with questions. At the only bank still open, she handed the card across the counter to a woman in a navy blazer. The teller's polite smile faltered the moment her eyes fell on it. She glanced up at Emily, then back down, as if holding something forbidden. After a long pause, her voice lowered. "This is a private account," she said carefully. "Anonymous, high tier. I can't disclose details, but, miss, whoever gave this to you must trust you very much." Emily swallowed hard. "I don't want the money. I'm not here to use it. I just needed to know." The woman nodded, sliding it back with both hands, as though it were holy. Emily walked out into the frozen street, the card burning in her pocket, her thoughts louder than the crunch of snow beneath her boots. Who exactly was Michael? Why leave her this token of power? And why did her heart ache at the thought that she might never see him or Noah again? When she reached the cabin, the silence inside hit harder than the storm. She sat at the table, holding the card, the letter open beside her. For the first time in years, tears slipped down her cheeks, not from fear, not from pain, but from the hollow ache of missing something she hadn't known she needed until it was gone. The storm had ended outside, but inside Emily's chest, a new one had only begun. The weeks that followed were merciless. Snow melted into gray slush. The mountains dripped with spring, but inside Emily's cabin, the silence only deepened. The black card lay hidden in her drawer, untouched. Each time she caught sight of it, her chest tightened, not with greed, but with questions that had no answers. She clung to routine, to work at the small-town library, the one place where words felt safe, where stories couldn't betray her, until the morning she arrived to find a sheet of paper taped to the door. Closed indefinitely, funding eliminated. Inside, her supervisor was boxing books with trembling hands. "I'm so sorry, Emily. They cut every rural branch. There's nothing we can do." Emily's legs felt hollow as she walked home. 2 jobs gone in 3 months. No family, no backup. The walls of her cabin seemed to close in tighter each night. She told herself she was used to solitude, that it didn't matter. But the truth was sharper. After Michael and Noah, silence felt unbearable. Days blurred. She sent out resumes, heard nothing. Until one evening, an envelope arrived. Heavy paper, crisp lettering, her name printed clean across the front. She tore it open, and her breath caught. "Dear Miss Emily Carter, we are pleased to invite you to a private interview for the newly established Community Outreach Program within Harrison & Co. We are seeking individuals of rare character, strong values, and demonstrated compassion. Your name was personally recommended. Travel arrangements have been made on your behalf. Please arrive at the time and date below. Sincerely, Michael Harrison, Chief Executive Officer." Her pulse thundered. The name leapt from the page like fire. Michael. She reread it 3 times, half convinced it was a mistake, a cruel coincidence. But deep down, she knew. The black card, the letter, the night in the storm. He hadn't vanished. He had been watching. The day of the interview, Emily rode the shuttle into the city, her hands damp against the folded invitation. The skyscrapers rose like giants, glass gleaming, swallowing her reflection whole. She stepped into Harrison & Compas's headquarters, floors polished to gold, walls alive with quiet power. The receptionist smiled knowingly. "Miss Carter? Yes, we've been expecting you." Her stomach knotted as she followed a woman in a navy suit down a long corridor of glass. Every step echoed like a drumbeat of fate. At the end stood an office larger than her entire cabin, windows stretching into the skyline. He was there. Michael stood with his back to her, framed by the city. When he turned, time fractured. He was the same and yet different. Charcoal suit, composed. Eyes steady but softer the moment they met hers. "Emily." His voice carried across the room, warm and sure. She gripped the letter in her hand. "Michael?" He stepped forward, no fire poker between them now, no storm howling at the door, just the truth. "You kept it," she whispered, almost accusing. "I took it," he admitted gently. "That morning, when we left, Eli called you our angel. I wanted to keep a piece of what that night meant." Her throat tightened. "Why me? Why bring me here?" Michael's gaze didn't waver. "Because you lived it. You know what it means to give without expecting anything back. That's the kind of leadership this program needs." He slid a folder toward her. "I want you to lead it, Emily. The Open Door Initiative. Inspired by you." The room pulsed with silence, heavy and fragile. Emily looked down at the folder, then back at him. All the nights of loneliness, all the storms, all the unanswered questions. Suddenly, they weren't endings. They were beginnings. And for the first time, Emily realized, the night she opened her door, she hadn't just saved two strangers. She had rewritten her own fate. The first weeks inside Harrison and Company felt like stepping into another universe. Boardrooms glittered with glass and steel. Donors in silk suits murmured over contracts. And yet, at the center of it all, sat a program born from a snowstorm and a single choice: the Open Door Initiative. Emily and Michael worked side by side, their days a blur of site visits, strategy meetings, and late-night calls. The project's mission was clear: provide long-term shelter, training, and childcare for single parents and the homeless. But beneath the structure, the heartbeat was hers, the night she'd unlatched her cabin door. Sometimes, as Michael presented to executives, his voice confident and precise, Emily caught herself staring too long. Other times, when she scribbled notes across pages at 2 a.m., she would look up and find him still there, jacket off, tie loosened, watching her with a gaze that said more than words. But the distance remained, a line neither dared cross. At the ribbon cutting of their first shelter, Noah stood grinning beside them, holding scissors too big for his hands. Emily guided him gently, her fingers brushing Michael's as the ribbon snapped. Applause roared, but in that tiny accidental touch, her heart thundered louder. That night, when the crowds had gone, they walked together under city lights, their shoulders brushed, lingering, electric. Yet silence filled the space where confessions might have lived. Michael broke it with a quiet smile. "You've changed this place, Emily. You've changed me." She swallowed hard, masking the tremor in her chest. "It was never just me," and though neither reached for the other, their shadows walked close, almost touching, like two lives circling the same fire, waiting for the courage to step closer. The gala was unlike anything Emily had ever seen. A sea of glittering gowns, crystal chandeliers pouring gold across polished floors, the hum of power and wealth vibrating in every corner. This was not her world, and yet, tonight, she was at the center of it. The event was held at Harrison and Company's flagship site, once an abandoned warehouse, now a state-of-the-art transitional living center. Donors, politicians, and reporters filled the hall, their eyes sharp, their whispers sharper. Emily smoothed her dress nervously, clutching a folder of notes. Michael stood beside her, composed as ever, his presence steady, but she felt the weight of every glance. Who is she? The crowd's stares seemed to ask. Why is she standing next to him? When her turn came to speak, Emily stepped forward, heart pounding. Her voice trembled as she spoke of families given a second chance, of children with safe beds for the first time in months. She talked of doors, how one open door could change a life. Her words were raw, imperfect, but real. As she stepped back, a reporter's voice sliced through the applause. "Miss Carter, isn't it true you were offered this position because of favoritism?" Murmurs rippled. The question hit like ice water. Emily froze. Before she could answer, Michael moved. Calm, deliberate. He stepped into the circle of light. His hand found hers, steadying her trembling fingers. "If I may," he began, his voice resonating through the hall. This woman standing beside me did not earn her place through favoritism. She earned it by saving my life. Gasps. Cameras flashed. The crowd leaned forward. Michael's gaze swept the room. Unwavering. One winter night, when I was nothing but a desperate father with a sick child in my arms, she opened her door. She risked everything for two strangers. That night changed me. It reminded me of who I was supposed to be. It gave me the courage to rebuild, not just my company, but my faith in people. His hand tightened around Emily's. Emily Carter is not here because of me. I am here because of her. The silence that followed was electric, fragile. Then, applause thundered, shaking the hall. Donors rose to their feet. Reporters scrambled to capture every word. But all Emily could hear was the pounding of her heart. All she could feel was his hand locked in hers. Later, when the crowd dispersed and the chandeliers dimmed, Emily found herself alone with Michael in the vast hall. The echoes of applause still lingered. She turned to him, voice breaking. "You didn't have to say all that." "Yes, I did." His eyes held hers, unflinching, soft yet fierce. "Because it's the truth." For the first time, he didn't let go of her hand. Instead, he drew her closer, the distance between them collapsing like walls crumbling after years of siege. Her breath caught, her chest trembling. And then, he kissed her. Not a cautious brush, not hesitation, but a kiss that carried the storm, the fire, and the silence of every night they had endured apart. When they finally broke, Emily's tears glistened under the fading lights. Michael pressed his forehead to hers, whispering, "You opened a door once. Now let me open one for us." In that moment, Emily knew the truth. The night of the storm had never ended. It had only been waiting for this. Winter returned gently, snow drifting down like silk across the mountains. Emily's boots crunched as she climbed the familiar steps of her old cabin. The door still creaked. The scent of pine and ash lingered inside. But this time, she wasn't alone. Michael followed, Noah bounding ahead with boyish excitement. The cabin looked smaller now, yet warmer, because of the memory it held. Above the mantel, framed in glass, hung Noah's drawing, the golden-haired woman opening her door to a man and his son in the snow. Emily's breath caught in her chest, sharp and sudden, as though the air itself had thickened around her. Her gaze fell on the caul-worn object resting in Michael's hand. "You kept it," she whispered, her voice fragile, threaded with disbelief and wonder. Michael's lips curved into a soft, almost shy smile. His eyes shimmered with a tenderness that words could never quite capture. "Of course, I did," he said, his tone quiet but certain. "It was the first place Eli called home again. I couldn't let it go, not after everything." The weekend stretched before them like a gentle reprieve from years of storms. They cooked together in the cramped little kitchen, their shoulders brushing as they moved past each other. Pots clattered, spoons stirred, and bursts of laughter filled the space where silence had once reigned like an unwelcome guest. Eli chased Noah through the narrow hallway, their feet thundering on the wooden floor, and even the house itself seemed to sigh with relief, as though finally allowed to be more than four walls. At night, they gathered by the fireplace, its glow soft and forgiving. No thunder rattled the windows. No wind howled against the glass. The only sound was the steady crackle of wood, surrendering to flame, and the occasional burst of laughter that rose between them like sparks. Emily leaned against Michael's shoulder, the warmth of his body grounding her. For the first time in what felt like years, there was no fear of what tomorrow might bring. There was only the quiet certainty of belonging. On the last evening, as the fire dwindled to embers, Michael took her hand. "Come with me," he murmured, his voice threaded with something she couldn't quite name. He led her out onto the porch, the boards creaking under their weight. The air was crisp, biting yet clean, and snowflakes drifted gently in the lantern light, swirling like tiny dancers suspended in the night. Emily shivered, but not from the cold. Her heart raced as Michael turned to face her. Slowly, deliberately, he reached into his coat pocket, her breath stilled. In the silence of the falling snow, he sank to one knee, not in a grand ballroom, not beneath glittering chandeliers, but here, in the quiet place where their story had truly begun. In his hand gleamed a simple silver ring. No diamonds, no extravagance, just something pure and honest. Inside the band, 6 engraved words caught the faint lantern glow. "Thank you for opening the door." Emily's eyes blurred, tears spilling before she could stop them. Her hands flew to her mouth, trembling. The meaning struck her with the force of 1,000 unsaid memories, of the night she had opened that door to him, to Eli, to possibility itself. Michael's voice broke the silence. It was steady, yet raw, carrying the weight of truths he had kept hidden for so long. "I used to believe I didn't deserve a family," he confessed, his voice cracking slightly, "that what I lost could never be found again. But you, Emily, you proved me wrong. With your hands, with your heart, you made us whole again. You gave me back a piece of myself I thought was gone forever." Emily's tears fell freely now, hot against the chill of the evening air. She knelt down before him, unable to let him remain lower than her, her hands cupping his face as though to anchor him in this moment. From behind them came a soft shuffle. Noah had woken, his small frame bundled in a blanket, his eyes wide and curious. He stood in the doorway, watching with innocence untainted by the heaviness of the past. Slowly, he stepped forward, snow crunching under his tiny boots, and wrapped his arms around both Emily and Michael. Eli, drawn by the quiet stir, appeared next, rubbing his eyes before breaking into a smile that carried all the light of his childhood. The 4 of them came together in the lantern glow, snowflakes settling gently into their hair and onto their shoulders. Michael slipped the ring onto Emily's finger, his hand steady despite the tremor in his chest. She looked at him through her tears, and with a nod, she whispered the only answer that mattered. "Yes, always yes." Snow continued to fall, soft and unhurried, wrapping the porch, the family, the very air around them in a blanket of quiet magic. It wasn't the kind of moment destined for headlines or fairy tales. It was something far more precious, something raw, fragile, and real. And as the snow sealed their night in silence, Emily realized that true wealth wasn't measured in diamonds or grand gestures. It was here, held in arms that refused to let go, in children's laughter spilling into the cold, in the fragile but unbreakable promise of belonging. Together, they were no longer fragments of broken pasts. Together, they were family. And so, what began with fear and a knock on a frozen night ended with love, family, and a door that would never close again. Emily, Michael, and little Noah remind us all, sometimes the smallest act of kindness can rewrite destiny. What do you think? Would you have opened that door? Share your thoughts in the comments, we read them all. And if this story touched your heart, hit like, share it with someone who needs hope, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories that prove love still wins.